All right, it's 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Definitely appreciate everybody coming. So today we're going to be talking about building a design-focused landscape business. So, so on the agenda for tonight, we're going to talk about setting expectations. So your web presence and your portfolio, your discovery call and client questions, and how that really sets the expectation for the customer as far as who you are as a design professional, the on-site consultation and my recommendations for that, the design proposal, the design process, the presentation, and the handoff to production. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Well, first of all, who am I? So I'm Dave Marciniak. I'm a landscape designer. I've got 20 plus years of experience, extensive experience with landscape design build. I built my company starting in 2008. Got laid off with a day's notice at the height of the recession. So it was definitely not a time that I was planning on starting a business, but I knew that I really wanted to be known for landscape design. And so what I did is a few techniques and tactics that I think can work for other people as far as really getting your name out there and making sure that you're seen as the authority on landscape design in your local area. Prior to starting my own business, I worked for a design build firm for 3 years and then worked in a really intensive landscape sales and design organization before that. So been around the block a couple times, kind of have a sense of what works and what doesn't. And now with my new company, Landscape Design Lab, I offer fractional landscape design services for landscape contractors. And I'll explain a little bit more about that later. So setting expectations, your web presence and your portfolio. And this is, again, typically your customer's first opportunity to encounter you and your first opportunity to really kind of showcase who you are and what you're all about. So the most important thing is to be the authority. And the funny thing about being an authority is even when you're first getting started, you know more than the homeowner. You're already the authority on landscape design. You can definitely showcase how awesome you are and everything that you bring to the table. So the first place to start with that is the homepage. And obviously that needs to reflect the quality of your company, the quality of your offering, and the quality of your design. That's kind of a no-brainer. The one that I think is definitely a bit of a surprise for people is the About page, and that's answering the question, why you? You would be absolutely amazed at the number of people that actually read About pages and really want to learn more about the professional that they're working with. I see too many companies where they treat the About page almost as kind of an afterthought or something that they just, kind of need to have, but nothing really important, and they just give really generic information about it. The last thing that I like to see on an about page is something where they don't even name who the owner is, who the designer is, and they just refer to it as the company. So, Landscape Design Lab was founded in 2026. Landscape Design Lab does this, Landscape Design Lab does that. Well, it's a company. There's nothing personal about it. If you go to my about page for Revolutionary Gardens, which is my landscape design build company, you'll actually learn all about my history, what led me into landscaping, what led me into landscape design, and telling the story that really drives home for the homeowner why this is important to me and why I'm the right choice for their project. And that's really what you're trying to do with your about page. I think you should definitely have a blog if you've got a landscape design company or a landscape design focused landscaping company. There's a principle called They Ask, You Answer. If you've ever heard of Marcus Sheridan, he's a speaker and writer. He's kind of famous for really making this a famous phrase. The idea being that you want your website to be a resource that customers are going to find if they're Googling information about landscaping local to them. So, for example, if a customer is looking for, how do I design a retaining wall? Or what does a retaining wall cost? Those are all opportunities that you can really kind of set the bar, set the expectation. So that way you are, again, presenting yourself as the authority. And the benefit to this also in the sales process is now you have said, hey, according to me, I am an authority on this. Listen to me. This is what a patio should be. This is what a planting should be. This is what a water feature should be. And now all of a sudden, anybody else that they talk to, anybody else that they come across, they're going to be comparing that to what you've already said and what you've already established. It's actually a phenomenal way to do it. And I will say, the blog, I've got about 300 blog posts on my blog. Again, I've been doing this since 2008. So I've had a little bit of time to do some writing. And what I found is when a customer comes to me and they're actually quoting from a blog page, I mean, at that point, it's a lay down sale. They pretty much are already invested in me as the authority on the subject, and will pretty much go with me down whatever road I want to go down. Another way to really establish yourself as the authority is by being a resource for press and getting citations back to your site. So, for example, I really try to get in front of reporters as much as I can. So if somebody is looking for quotes on an article that they're doing about spring gardening or something about how to build a pergola, that's something where I will make sure that I'm getting in front of that reporter, giving them a quote that they can use, and giving them, even some project photos. And typically they'll link back to me with a headshot of me, brief bio link, and it's a link to my website, which is also from a search standpoint really, really important. And so you may be wondering, okay, well, how do I get those opportunities? How do I get in front of a reporter that I can do that? There's actually a free service called HARO. It stands for Help a Reporter Out. It's helpareporter.com. And so what it is I get an email, I get 3 or 4 emails a day in digest form where it's all topics that reporters want to talk to somebody about. So to show you what that looks like, this is an example of a recent one. And you can see most of them are stuff that's completely not relevant to us and what we do. But if you look down at number 11 there, where I've got the little green arrow, landscape and garden designers needed for opinions on how to block noise. And it's Homes and Gardens magazine, which is a pretty trusted online home and garden resource. That's actually one where my quote is going to be featured in that along with a picture of my work because I was able to respond back to that reporter and give them the information that they needed. So it's a phenomenal resource, something that you can really take advantage of. And again, it's all about establishing yourself as the authority on landscape design and anything design related. It's also important to kind of note, who is your website for? Is it for any landscape customers or is it for your ideal design clients? This is one where I see people make mistakes, especially early on. I mean, I certainly did it because, again, I started in the height of the recession, and I was really trying to just get as many jobs as possible, get as much work as I possibly could. And so my website was kind of generic and focused on just bringing in, honestly, anything that would pay my mortgage at that point. Over time, I kind of changed the overall look and positioning of my website to make sure that it was going for customers that were actually looking for landscape design. I wanted to make sure that I was getting people that wanted to buy what I wanted to sell. So, what your portfolio says about your business is a huge part of your website and your online presence. Again, if you really want to be known for quality design jobs, then you probably don't want to have a portfolio that just looks like this. These are some photographs that I took for some local competitors of mine, I guess competitors. And you can kind of see a couple things that are wrong with it. I mean, construction wise, these look great. I really don't see any issues with the way that they built these projects. I'm sure they'll stand up and be really, really functional projects, but there's nothing about them that screams, hey, we're an amazing full service landscape design company. If I were a homeowner that was looking to collect 5, 6, 8 bids on a patio project, I would definitely call any of these companies. But if I was looking for an exceptional $100,000 backyard, I don't really think that there's somebody that I'd reach out to. I mean, you can definitely do better in terms of photographs, even just waiting until the plants were in, the mulch was in, making sure that it's not just seed and straw around the patio, making sure there's actually grass grown in, getting some furniture on them. Again, it's a pet peeve of mine, and I'm terrible about it too. Everybody in this industry is really awful about remembering to go back 6 months later and take photographs after the space has been lived in for a little bit, but go back and take photographs of the space actually being lived in. That's when you get photographs that look more like this, something where the homeowner can actually imagine themselves in that space. So again, we've got, some really pretty fire pits. We've got seats around them. This one view really kind of makes it look like it's something that the homeowner could almost put themselves in the shoes of, hey, I'm sitting at this chair, sitting around this fire pit. This is a backyard that I could be a part of. And also, professional photography is key. Both of these are professional photos as opposed to just going out there and snapping pictures with my Android. It's going to make a big difference in terms of the overall quality and how you're perceived. Because again, if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. So if your projects, if the portfolio pictures that you have on your website are all just very, very basic patios, then that's what you're going to get. So another part of setting expectations is the discovery call and client questions. And this is really, really important. So the way that my client intake process works is typically people reach out to me via email and through my web form on my website, and they'll type in what it is that they're looking to do and then have a contact phone number. I don't call them back right away. What I do is actually email them back and thank them for reaching out to me and let them know that the first step in the process is a phone call. And the whole idea of the phone call is to pre-qualify the job and to also kind of pre-sell my value. So the idea of that phone call is I actually have them schedule it because I want to make sure that it's a time that they're going to be, at their desk or someplace where they've actually got a little bit of time. They can talk in detail about their project and we can actually learn a little bit more about what it is that they're looking to do. I always have them send me photos of the site before the call, just so that that way I can go over the pictures and have kind of a clearer picture of what it is that they want to do while we're talking to them. Because in a lot of cases, a homeowner may say, "Hey, I need a retaining wall. I want to do a patio." You look at the pictures and it's just like, hey, you're going to need an 8 foot retaining wall here. Are you prepared for what's involved in that? So it's really good to have those photos to start with. So what kind of questions do you ask? I mean, the first one that I start off with is how did you find us? Obviously, if they're a referral from somebody like a past customer or a vendor that you work with, and that's phenomenal. That means that you've already got sort of a leg up on the competition with that phone call. If they just found you through like a regular Google search, then you're kind of fighting with everybody else, but it gives you an idea of what kind of footing you're on. If they tell you that they found you because, oh yeah, I was looking for a particular piece of information. I came across your blog post and read that, and then I read another couple blog posts. I mean, that person is invested in you, and you know that you've got yourself a really, really good lead at that point. The next thing I do is ask them to tell me a little bit about what they're looking to do. Keeping it as an open-ended question gives them nothing but room to talk about their project. Now, obviously, with the form that they fill out on my website, they do fill out what it is that they're looking to do, but I want to hear it. I want to hear it in their own words. I want to hear it in their own voice and really get a sense for what's important to them. Because obviously, what they type in 2 or 3 sentences on the website is not going to be anywhere near as involved as what it is that they're going to tell you. And really try to probe, get a sense of, again, why they're doing this. A lot of times people will be wanting to do a patio because, oh, my daughter's graduating from high school and I want to be able to have a really good party back there. So that also gives you an idea of time frame, gives you an idea of scope, just generally a good way to approach it. Again, review it with the photos in front of you. So that way you can ask intelligent questions. In a pinch, you can always go on like Google Maps, Google Street View, look at aerial imagery. But if they can send you actual photographs, I mean, it's 2026. Everybody's got a camera in their pocket now with their smartphone, so it's nothing for them to send you pictures. Ask them what the time frame is for this project. That obviously gives you a good idea as far as whether or not it fits in with what your schedule looks like and also whether it's realistic. We've all had the customer that calls us on April 28th and says, "Yeah, I really want to have this done in time for Mother's Day party." That's just not going to work. And then, do you have a budget in mind for this project? And this is obviously this one can be kind of tricky. Sometimes customers are a little bit cagey with their budget. Sometimes they don't really know what their budget is. That's where, again, if they have sent you photographs of what the site looks like, you can start getting an idea of the challenges, and you may be able to say, okay, it looks to me like you're going to need some grading and some wall work here. So this project could be 20 to $40,000. Is that something that you had in mind as a realistic budget for this, or what was your number that you were trying to reach? The most important thing is you want to make sure that you're only going out and meeting with customers that are actually qualified and are actually open to what it is that you do. And then the big question is, do you do these questions over the phone or do you do an intake survey or questionnaire? I've worked with some landscape architects and landscape designers who I mean, it's a phenomenal survey. One of them, it's an 11-page survey, has all kinds of questions for the homeowner. It's not the way that I like to do it because I feel like that creates an additional friction point for the customer and it makes it less likely that they're going to move down the funnel in the sales process and be a good lead. At this point, we want to make it as easy as possible for the customer to work with us and not necessarily force them to jump through a ton of hoops. But that's me. I'm also a little bit more natural, a little bit more comfortable on the phone to be able to steer the conversation and get the answers to the questions that I need. So the consultation, and this is when everything lines up on the phone. You like what they have to say, they like what you have to say, and you decide to get out there and actually meet with the homeowner. So this is it. This is you're on stage. This is your opportunity to sell yourself in person. So my big thing is to always be adding value. So obviously, this is an opportunity for you to meet the homeowner, get a sense for what they want, but it's also an opportunity for you to show the homeowner why you are so absolutely amazing that they would be insane not to hire you. So with this, the homeowner goes first. I always meet the homeowner at the door, tell them, okay, let's go ahead, get started. Walk me around, show me what it is that you're looking to do, what your issues are, what your questions are, and really allow them to do the majority of the talking to start out with. So we will actually walk around the property. I'm mostly listening. And they're telling me, okay, yeah, I'm thinking about doing a patio over here. I'm thinking about doing some plantings over here. Hey, I really hate that view of my neighbor's house. I want to screen that off. Whatever it is that they're going for. And at the same time, I'm looking at everything and identifying problems and opportunities. So I may say, hey, I noticed that you've got, some bare grass here and you've got some clear runoff. You've got an erosion issue. Are you looking to do anything about that? And they'll say, oh, wow, that's something that I wasn't really thinking about. But yeah, if we can address that, that's fantastic. Just little things that you can do that really kind of show that, hey, I'm taking in the entire thing, I'm taking in the entire project, and really getting a clear sense of what it is that you need. And the bottom line is your ideas are your value. So if the customer says, hey, I want to do a patio over here, and this is kind of what I'm thinking, if you look at it and you think, man, that could work. But what if we put the patio over here? And what if we did the layout kind of like this? And what if we did this? And then suddenly the homeowner might say, wow, I've never thought about it like that. But yeah, that actually does make a lot of sense. That's just, better flow coming out from the kitchen. That just works better with the topography of the land. And I've worked with other people who really have taken the idea of, well, until I get a check from them, they're not getting any ideas. And I kind of feel like that's a little bit short-sighted because at the end of the day, they're hiring you to do the design work based on how good your ideas are. If you're going to keep your ideas close to your chest and just show them your portfolio and say, hey, trust me, I can do the same thing for you, it's not necessarily going to work out. And, the other thing that I tell people is honestly, if somebody can take an idea that you spit out verbally and they can run with it and they can do just an amazing job as what you would have done, maybe the idea wasn't that special. So just, really be realistic about what it is that you're offering. And remember that the whole point of what we do is to remove uncertainty from the equation and to solve problems for our homeowners. So the big question is, do you charge for the initial consultation? I do. I like doing it because it compensates me for my time. It weeds out low intent prospects and it limits the bookings to serious buyers. But again, I feel like I can only do that if I offer real value. So my consultations are not just a quick in, out, done, 10 minutes, look at it, take some measurements, bebop on out of there. That's not what we do. I tell my customers figure on 45 to 60 minutes for a consultation. We'll go through, we'll walk the entire property. We'll, again, listen to everything that you have to say. I'll give my ideas. We'll kind of talk about what's possible, identify potential problems, what the solutions might be. So, again, the customers are on board with the paid consultation because they're actually getting something out of it. They're not just paying a fee that's sort of a pre-qualifying fee. So the design proposal is just one more opportunity for you to sell yourself and sell your value. So every document is a positioning opportunity. So again, you really want to showcase that you are the premier design option in your local area. So start off with an introductory letter as part of the proposal. Hey, dear homeowner, thanks for contacting us. Yeah, every project is really important to us. We want to make sure that it's an individual to you. Whatever it is that you come up with for language on that, but really kind of drive home the fact that, hey, we really appreciate the business and we are going to absolutely knock this out of the park for you. Examples of similar projects. So because I'm emailing over a design proposal, it's easy enough for me to include photos of similar projects that we've done, just so that they can kind of see what our work looks like and what it is that we can do for them. The design proposal obviously wants to cover the scope of work and the deliverables, and then the bottom line, what it's going to cost. And then we'll also include some testimonials in there just so they can see what other people have thought about it. In some cases, that's pulling from Google reviews or other reviews, or I've had customers that have just written me testimonials and said, yeah, you can go ahead and use this whenever. So it gives customers again that feeling that like, hey, wow, this person is absolutely awesome, knows exactly what they're talking about, and they are somebody that I can trust with what we're doing. So pricing the design is always a big question. And so the first thing is hourly versus flat rate. Typically what I found is homeowners are not comfortable with the idea of just saying, oh yeah, I'm 160 bucks an hour, and once I start, and once I'm done, I'm done. And I'll just tell you what that costs. Obviously, most people are not okay with that because most homeowners, might do one, maybe two big landscape projects in their lifetime. So they're not going to be okay with that big question mark of, hey, what is this going to cost? So instead, I do my design fees based on a flat rate. So what I do is I'll actually work out on an Excel sheet. Okay, this is how long it's going to take me to go out there and measure and do the site analysis. This is how long it's going to take me to base map it in AutoCAD. This is how long it's going to take me to do the initial design. It's going to take me an hour to present the initial design to the homeowner. And then it's going to take me this amount of time to do the final design, drafting details, the additional documentation, and then the final presentation. So obviously I'm including all that time in it, but then that way they can say, okay, so I'm going to spend 3,200 bucks and this is what I'm getting for it. I know that that's what this is going to cost. Obviously you want to decide if you're doing 2D or 3D design. 2D design is going to be more cost effective. 3D is additional time, something that has to be factored into that. So a lot of that just depends on the customer. I know some studios, they do 3D design for everything. I personally don't. I'm a big fan of keeping the cost as reasonable as possible for the homeowner because at the end of the day, if you're doing design build, you want to make sure that you are putting yourself in a position to win the job overall. You definitely want to make sure that you've got a clearly defined scope in your design proposal. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, well, this is going to be a landscape master plan for the rear of the property, starting at the left rear corner of the house, going back to the rear property line, and then going over to the right rear house corner. And what we're going to design is we're going to design patio, we're going to design plantings, we're going to design lighting, we're going to design drainage. Basically, everything that I am going to be designing gets included in that scope of work. Exclusions are super important to have in there. So for example, if I'm designing, like let's say I'm designing a pavilion for a customer, obviously they may not want to pay for full construction drawings and everything else right off the bat without knowing everything that they're getting into. So I will have the exclusion in there that, the design includes a pavilion of this size, but it's going to be the footprint only, does not include any construction drawings. Same thing with engineering. I keep the engineering fees separate. That's something that when we move on to the design phase or the construction phase of the process, that's when the engineering fees and the permitting fees and stuff like that come in there. Um, One thing that you really want to make sure that you're doing is limiting the amount of revisions that you're doing and making sure that the customer is very decisive about what they want. The process that I found works the best is I do an initial presentation. So what I'll do is I'll go out, do my site analysis, do my measuring, get everything put into AutoCAD, and then I'll do my sort of first draft of what I think the design should be. And for the most part, I'm typically only doing one pass at that time. I'm not presenting them with multiple options or anything like that, unless there's something where I see like, okay, I can go one of two ways here and both are awesome, and I'm not really sure which one to go with. In which case, that case, I'll actually do two designs as part of that initial presentation. But for the most part, it's a rough draft. And we have that conversation. And the whole idea is that that way we're making sure that the size of spaces, the space planning, the flow, the circulation, what views we're preserving, what views we're blocking, all of that is captured within that. And that's when we have that conversation with the homeowner. So that way we can make sure, okay, are we on the right track or are we not on the right track? And it saves a lot of time because rather than detailing out a full final presentation and getting to the point where the customer might say, hey, you know what? I know I said I wanted this over there, but now that I see everything laid out in plan view, it makes more sense to do it over here. You'd rather catch that early on in the process. So what I do is after the initial presentation, I take all that feedback, go back to my desk, work on the final product, and then that's what I present to them with everything detailed out. And typically, what I do is I only include 2 hours of revision time after the final plan presentation in the design proposal. And the reason that I do that is I make it very, very clear to the customer if there's any big swings at this design after the initial presentation meeting, that is the time for you to tell me. That's the time for you to share that with me. So that way I can incorporate all of that information into the final plan presentation. And then after the final plan presentation, that's when we're looking at minor tweaks where it might be, oh, you know what, I like this plant better than this plant, or, hey, maybe I just want to use a different paver or do something a little bit different. That's all pretty quick to change. So the idea is to keep them limited to 2 hours of revision time. That way, they're decisive. They're not sitting out there making a whole bunch of changes at the 11th hour. Optional add-ons, and this is something that is part of my design proposal. I'll say that this is not included within the scope, but it's something that is available. Obviously, I list out what my additional revision time costs. So if they decide, if we get all the way through the process, if the initial presentation, the final presentation, and the revision time, and then they say, hey, you know what? I completely changed my mind. Instead of doing this, I want to do this and I want to do it over here. Well, at that point, we're basically gutting and redoing the entire design. So at that point, the clock is running. You know what I'm capable of. If you want us to continue, then, this is how much it's going to cost. Shop drawings are something that, again, I offer as an add-on. Same thing with permit drawings. I don't typically include those in the initial plan package just because sometimes a customer is not necessarily ready to move on the design right away. So it doesn't make sense to do a whole bunch of permit drawings when it may sit on a shelf for 3 years before they're ready to move forward. And all of a sudden, we're working out of a different IRC book for codes and everything needs to change. So it keeps the cost down for the customer. It also limits the amount of time that I might have to spend, reconfiguring stuff to meet up to new codes and things like that. So one big question is to credit or not to credit the design fee. And this is something that I see a lot of companies struggle with. I am personally not a big fan of crediting the design feedback if they decide to have us do the work. Basically, I position the design process as its very, very own process. I explain it to the customer that, hey, the design and the construction process are totally separate. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in, we're going to do the design process, and we're going to actually come out again, do the site analysis, do the initial presentation, final presentation, revisions, and then that is a process all on its own, and you're paying a separate fee for that. If you're happy with the design, if it's something that you want to move forward with, then we move to estimating, which is part of the construction process, and then that goes from there. I just feel like crediting the design fee really undercuts the amount of value that we're bringing with the design process. So let's talk about the design process a little bit. So bottom line, be amazing. I think that's really the most important thing that I can say about the design process. You're only as good as your last design. There are no small design jobs and make every opportunity count. So when I first went out on my own in 2008, like I said, I had not planned on being in business for myself. I had no marketing budget. I had no real significant leads. And so with every project that I got, even with the small ones, I made it a point to make sure that I designed the holy heck out of every project that came my way. And the reason that I did that is I knew that I did not want to have a portfolio of basic looking work. I wanted to make sure that every job that I did had something special about it. So one of the first freelance design clients that I had when I went out on my own was a nursery chain in the DC area. And I actually did all of their design work for the Northern Virginia customers. They were kind of a mid-tier nursery, so definitely not on the higher end, not on the lower end. But I struggled at first because I thought, well, shoot, should I just dumb my designs down a little bit and sort of give them what they're expecting. And then that way the nursery can close more business and I can get paid for what I'm doing. But I quickly decided that no, if I'm going to be doing this, I really want to make these designs something special and I want to do something that I can be proud of. So what I did is I actually started making the designs as interesting and unusual as I possibly could. If I was designing a front foundation planting, that was going to be the coolest front foundation planting that that neighborhood had ever seen. And the cool thing about it was I never got any pushback. I was honestly expecting that, hey, I'm going to do something kind of cool, something kind of funky. Worst case scenario, the customer hates it and I redo it. Never once had a customer asking me to redo it because you know, people may not have the language to say, oh, I like this because of this, or I don't like this because of this, but they know what they know. They know what they like, they know what they see. If they see good design, that's something that's going to resonate for them. So you really want to make sure that you are taking that opportunity to do something special for your clients. So what if you're not a designer? So this is my little 1 minute silly sell for what I do. So Landscape Design Lab. So we are actually a fractional design team for landscape contractors. So what we do is whether you have a designer on staff who is just completely overworked and can't get to everything on time, or if you don't have a designer on staff, but you want your company to be known for great design, we will actually step in and do the landscape design for you. So it's a really cool thing. We look at it as, again, we're a fractional design employee, which means that you get access to us when you need us, but we don't cause you an overhead cost when you don't need us. So that is my 1 minute spiel for what I do. And again, if you want more information on that, that's landscapedesignlab.com. So let's talk about the presentation because that is for me, that's the fun part of it. That's when you get to really make the customer excited and have a lot of fun. And that's when you get the oohs and ahs. And at the end of the day, you know, we're all in it for validation. And that's where the validation comes in. So running the meeting, the first question is, do we do it via Zoom or do we do it in person? And for the longest time, I did all my presentation meetings in person. I was very adamant about it, that I would print the drawings off, actually do some hand rendering, show up, roll out the drawings on the kitchen table, and go through everything with them. If there was any questions that came up, we could actually take a walk outside, look at the space in real time. And, that worked fine. And then COVID hit and everybody moved to Zoom. And honestly, I haven't gone back to in-person meetings. So what I love about Zoom is a couple things. So first of all, everybody's used to Zoom at this point. So the nice thing about it is you're actually getting their full attention. You're getting people when they're sitting down in front of their computer, which to them is like, hey, I'm in work mode all of a sudden, so I am doing this, and this is my focus. There's no more issues with, hey, I got to feed the kids, I got to go deal with this, I got to go deal with that. For whatever reason, I find that people are just so much more focused on Zoom meetings than they are when you're there in person, especially, God forbid, around dinner time. It also makes it a little bit easier for them to fit those meetings in throughout the day. Everybody that works an office job, for the most part, they're not working a full 8 hours a day. They can usually find 2 or 3 hours during the day. Not that it takes that long for a presentation, but they can find some time during the day that they can squeeze in a Zoom meeting to go over the landscape design, landscape proposal. So that's why my little spiel on why I like doing the Zoom meetings. I just think it works better. And then the important thing too is that it makes it really easy to pull up additional information. So obviously I'm sharing the landscape plan with them via Zoom, but then if they don't understand something and I want to pull up a picture of a similar project that we've done, it's easy enough for me just to go ahead and open that folder up on my computer, pull that out. Makes it really, really easy to do the presentation. One thing that I'm super, super hardcore about when it comes to presentations is making sure that all parties are present. And so that's also really important in the consultation as well, that any stakeholders in the project, so making sure that both spouses or partners or whoever it is, making sure that everybody is available for all meetings, because the worst thing that happens is you get all the way into the design process, you get all the way through it, and then all of a sudden up pops this spouse that you've never spoken to before, and all the information that you were given has nothing at all to do with what they wanted. I had one customer in particular who Only the wife met with us. We didn't have an opportunity to meet with the husband. She told us what she wanted. We did the design based on that. And the husband came back and said, "Well, why is there a patio here?" I said I wanted a deck. "Well, you never said you wanted a deck to us, and that was never conveyed to us." And so all of a sudden, now we're having to make some major changes. So all parties being present is very, very important. And I think that's something that's a hard line. And that's one of the nice things about a Zoom meeting too, is that if you get on the call and 5 minutes in, everybody's not on that call, it's easy enough to say, okay, you know what? We really want everybody to be here, so we need to go ahead and reschedule this for a time when everybody can be here. In terms of presentation materials, it really kind of comes down to what's appropriate for the project, but at a minimum, we do the landscape plans, related drawings and details, 3D renders, Plant Master, which I'll show you what that looks like here in a second, lighting tear sheets, material tear sheets, and the budgeting proposal. So, landscape plan drawing, obviously you want to make sure that it's a professional looking landscape plan. In this case, color rendered using Land Effects. Couple things that you want to make sure that you have on all your drawings is obviously you want to have your page numbers, you want to have a detail, you want to have a note stating whether it's your total landscape, front landscape, rear landscape, whatever, the date for the plan, who drew it, and that can, in this case it's you, in this case it's me. Company name on the title block, the homeowner's name and address, and then also you want to have just basic things on there like a north arrow. And then on my conceptual designs, I always have a note on there, the one that I've got up here in the corner. This drawing is for preliminary conceptual design only and is not intended for construction purposes. So the idea being that, obviously if the customer hires you to do the landscape design, they own the plan, they can take it, they can shop it, but we don't warranty that it's going to be 100% buildable for anybody off the street. There's obviously proprietary information that we don't put on every drawing just because what we're presenting to the customer is a conceptual plan, not necessarily a full construction set. Obviously, you want to make sure that you've also got a detailed planting plan. So in this case, everything called out, everything leadered, everything identified. If you're doing renders, it's a great opportunity to showcase what you can do for renderings. And so I'd mentioned Plant Master as one of the things that we do as part of the presentation. So if you're not familiar with Plant Master, it's plantmaster.com. It is one of the best resources that I've come across for presentations. So what you do is you take your plant list and you can actually, there's a couple ways you can get your plant list into there. You can manually type in each plant and then click a little button and it pulls up a full presentation with photographs and descriptions of all the plant material that you're looking at using. If you're a Land Effects user, which I am, you can actually export your entire plant list as a CSV file and you can bring it into Plant Master and it'll auto-populate it for you. Even if you're doing it manually, the last time that I did a Plant Master presentation as far as loading everything in, I want to say it took me about 3.5 minutes to get the entire thing loaded in and ready for presentation. So gone are the days when we used to, what I used to have to do is go through my folder of all photographs of plant material that I've taken over the years, pull it into Photoshop, adjust the pictures, type in the text. No more having to do that. Now this is just all auto-generated, which I think is just absolutely phenomenal. Also like to include lighting tear sheets, material tear sheets. So for an example, this is what a tear sheet looks like from Brilliance LED for the Black Diamond Tiki light. Typically, if you go on their website, you'll find it under spec sheets or tear sheets, depending on the manufacturer, but this is just a really good thing to include with your presentation. And then typically what I include with a presentation, whether it's for a customer that I'm actually looking to do the build or if somebody that just hired me just for the design, is I'll include a budgeting proposal. And so that breaks down the big thing that every customer wants to know, which is what is this going to cost me? So what I do is I break it down into logical phases of construction, and I will actually type out a narrative for each section, just the way that I would for proposals. So for example, if I'm doing a patio, this approximate square footage, these approximate dimensions, constructed of this, constructed in this method, constructed in this location. And then what I do is I give a budget range. At that point, I'm not trying to give exact figures. I'm just trying to give them a range so that way they can kind of look at it and say, okay, we have X amount set aside for this year. We have X amount set aside for next year. So what is it from this project that we can do that we can execute on for right now? At this point in the process, it's not always necessary to get exact figures unless you know for a fact that these folks are hot to go and they really, really want to do that project right now. So the idea is to give them a guideline and not a contract. And that's one thing that I do make very, very clear is that this is not a contract document. This is strictly a budgeting guideline. So it makes it really, really easy for the customer to understand. And then the handoff to production is something that's super important because if your project can't get built the way you designed it, then nobody knows how awesome of a designer you are. So you want to set the team up for success. So that's including scaled copies of all drawings, scaled layout drawings, shop and construction drawings for specific details, material lists and palettes. That one's really, really important because I didn't always do it. And then what we ran into was, especially with doing designs for other contractors and other installers, what would happen is the team wouldn't quite understand, like, okay, this is where we're transitioning to this different paver or this different flagstone style, or, just whatever might change or be a little bit funky or different on the site. They were missing that detail. So you want to make sure that you're making that as easy as possible for them. And then you obviously, as much as possible, you want to be a part of last second field decisions. We all know how it is. Sometimes you're out on site, you dig down, and hey, there's a whole bunch of pipes that nobody's really sure what they are, but nothing can go there now. So the whole design has to shift over by 8, 9 feet. And as the designer, it's really important to be a part of that so that you don't end up with something just absolutely god awful and ugly happening. This photograph on the right is a drone photo of a project that I designed and is overlaid with the CAD plan. So it shows how if you're doing your layout drawings properly, this is how accurate you can actually make your handoff to the field. It makes it super easy for them to make your design look exactly like what it looks like on paper. And just as an example, this is a layout drawing. This is the way that I do my layout drawings for all of my crews and for my contractors. So what we do is we actually go through, identify where you're going to pull your string lines, where you're going to set your radius points, and just make it really, really easy for the crew to lay everything out. So that's it in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions, there is a little Q&A box down at the bottom. Definitely open for any of those. We've got a little bit of time. If not, I'll let you all go. I definitely appreciate everybody taking the time to be part of this and hope you got some good value out of it. Okay, how do I build in profit to my proposal estimates? Boy, that's a big question. So I would assume that you mean profit as far as in the actual install proposal as opposed to the design proposal. So I'm old school. It's kind of embarrassing. I actually still do my estimating in Excel. So I have one column that is for cost and then one column that is for cost extended. And then I've got another column that is retail or, the cost that I charge to the customer. So I do a 2x markup on everything. So that's basically how I build my profit into my proposal estimates. Hopefully that answers your question there. What did the first 3 years of your business look like in terms of focus and growth? It was nutty. Yeah, the first 3 years of my business were absolutely crazy and kind of white knuckling it. So I got really, really fortunate because my second customer was actually the owner of a local winery who had just a ton of money that he wanted to throw at his house and then at his winery. So that really helped me out in terms of getting my business established and also getting some really, really good portfolio jobs built up. In terms of focus, I always stayed on track with the idea of, okay, this is the kind of business that I want to do. This is what I want to be known for. I want to be known for exceptional design. So I really quickly learned to become pretty picky about what projects I was accepting and what projects I was working on, and only taking projects that fit with that model of what I wanted to do. So if this is recorded, can be made available? Yes, absolutely. That can definitely be made available. Let me do this. Just pull my smiling face up here. And then let's see. What was your progression like from designer to setting up your own shop? Can you expand on your fee structure for different phases of design and fee for construction admin oversight? Yeah, absolutely. So the progression of from going from designer, oh, and just sorry to answer the first question before you. If this is recorded, can be made available to us via email? Yeah, absolutely. As far as I know, the recording is working on this. So I will make that, I will send that out to everybody afterwards. But anyhow, so as far as the progression from designer to setting up my own shop, so again, I had about 4 years of experience as a designer under my belt. The thing where I got really, really fortunate is the design build company that I worked for 3 years was just an absolutely amazing shop. I got to do a ton of different projects. I got to work under people that were really, really good designers. And so that made it to where it was a relatively easy transit. I mean, I say easy, I started in the height of the recession, but it made it a fairly easy transition for me to step into my own role because at that point I had been working as a designer for, 4 years at that point. As far as my fee structure for different phases of design, so again, what I do is I base everything off my hourly rate. I charge 160 bucks an hour. And then so what I do is I'll say, okay, if it's going to take me 2 hours to measure this, an hour to base map it, that's 3 hours. It's going to take me 12 hours to design it, so that's 15 hours, and another 3 hours for meetings, so that's 18 hours. So 18 times 160, so that's 2880. So gives you kind of an idea of just sort of how I figure the math out. Typically, I'm pretty good about knowing how long it's going to take me to do something, because again, I've been doing this for 20 years. Obviously, as you're getting started, you'll have to kind of ease into it and figure out exactly what your costs are. As far as construction admin and oversight, typically I won't get involved in construction admin or oversight for less than 15% of the project gross. Just because what I found is the customer has such high expectations and is really kind of holding my feet to the fire in terms of making sure that the contractors are doing what they're supposed to be doing, making sure the materials are accurate, making sure that everything else is right, that anything less than 15% just isn't worth my time and isn't worth my stress and headache. So I haven't always done install in addition to design. When I first started the business, my goal was to be design only. There was two reasons why I moved to install. So one of them was purely financial. Um, it's if you're selling design for, especially back then, because I was just getting started. So I mean, if you're selling design for like, let's say, $1,000, um, you want to make any kind of a decent living, you got to sell 60 or 70 of those a year. And that's getting in front of a lot of people. I live in a small town. It was really, really hard to find that many people. And so that was part of the reason why I got into the install side of things. The other reason why I got into the install side of things is, again, I had experience in design build, so I was used to being able to get stuff built the way that I wanted to. And I got really, really frustrated by seeing stuff done poorly. And so I really wanted to make sure that my projects were getting built the way that I wanted them built. So that's the whole reason why I switched over to design and install. With Landscape Design Lab, with my new business, the goal is to actually transition out of install and just go back to doing design only. Hopefully that's something that works out. We'll kind of see how that goes, but that's the goal with that. And then top three things for you to focus on in the first 3 years of your business. Take every opportunity to get in front of people that you possibly can. One of the ways that I built my business on a shoestring was by networking really, really aggressively. I actually joined some networking organizations, made sure that I was getting in front of architects and builders and realtors, which realtors are I can kind of take or leave. That's a whole separate side discussion, but if you find the right realtor, you can get a really, really good referral partner. The idea being is to make sure though that you are really putting your name out there and introducing yourself to the right people and getting in front of people that can help you succeed and that actually want to see you succeed. I mean, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would say. And then just also really stick to your guns in terms of the quality of what you want to do and the types of projects that you want to do. When lead flow gets a little bit light, when it's February and you're just kind of feeling like, man, I could really use something, you'll be tempted to take on something that doesn't quite fit with what you want to do. You'll regret it. That's just kind of the nature of it and how that works. And then, yeah, I mean, as far as the third thing goes, I mean, just take every opportunity to better yourself and become a better designer. Like I said, you're only as good as your last design. I have been doing this for 20 years. I look back at designs that I did 15 years ago and I'm kind of like, all right, yeah, I can see where I was going with that, but I would have done it totally different now. And that's important. I think as landscape designers, it's really easy to kind of get on a kick where we have something that is just sort of our thing right now. I can go back through my designs and can be like, wow, I was really on an Annabelle hydrangea kick back then, or, wow, recently it's been a ton of native plantings and stuff like that. And, stonework has been kind of a through line for me. So, yeah, that's the only other thing I would say is just figure out what your style is and really kind of put that forward. That's going to be huge because your style defines who you are and what kind of clients you get. And at the end of the day, you want to be something special as a designer. So I would definitely do that. I mean, as far as pitfalls to watch out for, just make sure you're working with the right people. There's contractors out there who I've freelanced for who, they hire me for my design work and then, they won't listen to anything I have to say. Sometimes you have to be really, really careful about knowing not just who you want to work for, but who you don't want to work for. And I think that's really important. Let's see. Do you use Land Effects for drafting and rendering? Any other project programs you use or tools that help with efficiency? Yeah, so I use Land Effects for drafting and rendering. Um, I'm a huge fan of it. I was just typically using AutoCAD LT for the longest time, and then I got turned on to Land Effects. I think for what it does for the planting CAD is really, really awesome. I think it's a great tool. It makes my presentations look really good. It makes it really easy to get all of my plant schedules together and have easy information for me to transfer between design and the field and everything else like that. Other programs and tools that I use, I mean, Land Effects is a big one. I use SketchUp for 3D rendering. And then, like I said, PlantMaster is a tool that I absolutely love and I just find fantastic for presentations. So that's really kind of the main suite of what I use. Yeah, does anybody have any other questions or because yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I've definitely enjoyed this. I hope you guys really got something good out of it. Yes, we got a raised hand. I'm not quite sure what to do with that in the webinar. You may just have to type something into because I don't think there's a private chat, is there? Sorry, this is my first time doing a webinar in like 10 years, so I'm just still figuring this out. Let's see here. Oh, cool. I can allow you to talk. Hang on. All right. Jason, are you there? Oh, you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute you. All right. Well, I tell you what, I can't figure this out. So I do apologize for that. I can't quite figure out how to get you unmuted. So yeah, Jason, feel free to shoot me an email, or shoot me a message on LinkedIn, and I can answer any questions that you have beyond that. Let's see here. Yeah, sure. One more question. What you got, Angeline? So when you start with a new client, do you use an intake form or is it all via interview? So I actually, when I first started, I had an intake form that I would fill out like as I was on the phone with them. But I do it all via interview just because, again, I've been doing this so long that yeah, it's pretty basic for me at this point. Well, cool. Well, if that's everything, I am going to let you guys go. I definitely appreciate all the time. And yeah, I will let you guys know when I'm doing the next webinar. I've got one planned for about 2 weeks from now. I'm still working on the outline for it, but I will let you know when that comes up and we will go from there. So thanks, everybody. And you guys have a great night. Oh, got one raised hand there again. Sorry, I don't know what to do with the raised hand. So, uh, uh, uh. Okay, cool, cool. All right, awesome. Well, I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you so much.